Have you ever stopped to think about how a TV show could be more than just entertainment? What if it could be a blueprint for the future? Well, that's exactly the story of Star Trek. It didn't just predict what was coming, it was actively shaping our world, from our social values to the actual hardware of space exploration.
It's a great question, right? It almost doesn't make sense. The show kicks off in 1966, runs for just 79 episodes, and then, poof, NBC cancels it because of low ratings. But you see, that cancellation wasn't the end, not even close. In fact, that's where the real story and the show's unbelievable power actually begins.
So to really get why Star Trek was such a big deal, we have to travel back in time. We have to look at the world it was born into. The 1960s were, to put it mildly, a chaotic time, full of division and conflict. And right in the middle of all that, this show comes along offering something totally different. A vision that was deeply, radically optimistic.
I mean, look at this contrast. On one side, you've got the reality of 1966, the Cold War hanging over everyone's heads, the war in Vietnam tearing the country apart, and social unrest everywhere. And then, on the other side, Star Trek presents this incredible 23rd century future, a future built on planets working together, on exploring peacefully, and on this core idea of diversity and equality. This wasn't just escapism, it was a powerful statement about what humanity could be.
This is where the show's creator, Gene Roddenberry, gets really clever. He was a World War II veteran, and he knew that getting his progressive ideas on TV in the 60s was going to be tough. So he pitched it as a wagon train to the stars. You know, a simple, classic adventure series set in space. But secretly, his real goal was to create these morality tales, using alien planets as a way to talk about things like war, racism, and all the big issues of the day.
And nowhere was that vision clearer than on the bridge of the Starship Enterprise itself. Because, the most radical thing about Star Trek probably wasn't the phasers or the warp drive. It was the people. Roddenberry was adamant that the crew should look like the world he was dreaming of.
Just take a look at this crew. In the middle of the civil rights movement, you have a brilliant African woman, Lieutenant Uhura, as a senior officer. Just 20 years after World War II, the guy flying the ship, Sulu, is Japanese-American. And get this, at the absolute peak of the Cold War, the navigator is a Russian. This wasn't just ticking boxes, it was a powerful political statement. The message was unmistakable. In the future, our differences make us stronger and we all work together.
And this wasn't just symbolic. It had a real, profound impact on people watching at home. That impact is just perfectly captured in this quote from, well, one of the most important people of the entire 20th century.
The story is absolutely legendary. Nichelle Nichols, the actress who played Uhura, was actually thinking about quitting after the first season. But then, at an NAACP event, someone told her there was a fan who was desperate to meet her biggest fan. And that fan turned out to be Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He told her, flat out, that she could not leave the show. He explained that her role was one of the only times Black people were seen on TV as equals, as professionals. He saw the power in that, and he convinced her to stay.
But the show's commitment to pushing for progress didn't stop with its casting. Oh no, it went even further, leading to one of the single most talked about moments in the history of television.
This moment happened in the third season, and let me tell you, the network executives were terrified. They were so worried about backlash, especially from TV stations in the South. But the show's creators, they just refused to back down. The kiss between Captain Kirk and Lieutenant Uhura became this huge landmark event. Now, the plot had this clever workaround where aliens with telekinetic powers were forcing them to do it. That was the trick to get it past the censors. But honestly, the excuse didn't matter. The visual itself was undeniable. It sent a message of equality that has echoed for decades.
So you'd think a show this groundbreaking and important would be a ratings giant, right? Well, not so much. After its second season, NBC decided to cancel it. But what the network executives didn't count on was the passion of its fans, who were about to completely change the game for how audiences interact with the show.
These fans, who had started calling themselves Trekkies, heard the cancellation rumors and they just refused to let their show die. What they organized next was something that had basically never been seen before.
The whole story really comes down to this one number, 100,000. Actually, more than 100,000 letters flooded into NBC's headquarters, all with the same message: save our show. It was one of the very first and most successful fan campaigns in TV history.
And we're not just talking about letters. This was a full-blown movement. There were protests on college campuses. Students at Caltech literally marched on NBC studios carrying signs that said Vulcan Power. The fans' passion was just overwhelming, and NBC had to listen. They renewed the show for a third season.
But even after the show was finally canceled for good, the influence of these fans only got stronger. And their next big campaign wasn't about saving a TV show, it was about bringing a piece of that show into the real world.
This is where fan power hits a whole new level. It's the 1970s, and NASA is getting ready to unveil its first ever space shuttle. The original name was going to be Constitution, but the Trekkies launched another massive letter-writing campaign. Their argument was simple. The first real spaceship of this new era had to be named Enterprise. The campaign was so huge that it got the attention of President Gerald Ford, and he stepped in. In 1976, NASA officially changed the name.
And this was the ultimate payoff. At the rollout ceremony in 1976, Gene Roddenberry and the original cast of Star Trek were there, standing right next to the real-life Space Shuttle Enterprise. I mean, just imagine that moment. The line between science fiction and science fact had completely vanished, all because of the dedication of its fans.
The show's legacy is just immense. Nichelle Nichols, inspired by her own experience, went on to work with NASA to help recruit the first women and minority astronauts. Once the show went into reruns, it found a massive new audience, becoming the #1 syndicated show by the mid-80s. And maybe most importantly, it inspired countless people to become scientists, engineers, and artists, all because of that one optimistic vision of the future.
And that really leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? Star Trek proved that pop culture can be this incredible force for change, that it can offer a hopeful vision that inspires real-world action. So it makes you wonder, in our own complex, often divided world, what are the stories we're telling that will inspire the next generation to boldly go?